My name's Andy Morris, consultant sales engineer here at Mitel. I'm presenting to you today why Mitel is important in hybrid and why we're seeing more customers migrating to Mitel from pure cloud. So what's the driver? There are a number of drivers in the market today. One of them most clearly is something called cloud fractionalization, and that's where organizations are looking at moving workloads back from public cloud like AWS, Azure, GCP, back to that on-premise private cloud or hybrid solution. Some drivers behind that are things like the Cloud Act of 2018 in the USA, which means that they could, in theory, have to give up data for any customer that's attached into that cloud infrastructure. And there are other drivers across the European market and the international market where we're seeing more sovereignty in data and more organizations wanting more control about where their data is held. So we did this presentation for the Nordic market, and there are a number of things available in the Nordics or being published in the Nordics in case of war or in case of having to effectively build virtual walls to ring fence a country. So we can see in the Nordic market there's been a lot of information put out to businesses and put out to individuals around what to do and how to act in a case where they wanted to look at locking down a market only to have sovereignty within that market. And we're seeing that in the Nordic market. We're seeing it in parts of Europe. This is the same sort of similar situation in the Netherlands. And then we can see in France, they've actually gone one step further. So in the French market today, they're looking at removing the requirement or the need of any non-sovereign video or collaboration platform. This means that they're moving to a purely French technology and removing anything that's hosted within public cloud environments. The drivers behind it, we've seen a shift in the last 12 months really with the geopolitical trends, whether it's been driven from the public national conflicts that we see every day or the threats from cyber security that has no geographical border, so it's not subject to the rules within that country and that organization. And we see signs of countries that are looking at Germany where regulation policy is being discussed, requiring more sovereignty, resilience in the solutions, reducing dependencies on single data centers or hosted data centers. And we're seeing that a lot. And we're seeing organizations look at their infrastructure, look at their strategy, and looking at flexibility and how they're building that into their decisions now that will last them and take them forward in the next 5 to 10 years. Hybrid communications is where Mitel really sits into that. We can see a lot of organizations today across the EU, the UK, globally, looking to migrate out of public cloud away from UCaaS solutions and deploy either private cloud or a hybrid model that includes both. Mitel itself is very well placed. You can see when we look at the other places in the market, Five9, TalkDesk, Genesys, they're locked into that CCaaS model. Again, with the UCaaS players, 8x8, Ring, Intermedia, they haven't got an alternative offering. And then sort of our other competitors in the market, Avaya narrowing their focus, Teams, WebEx, no concentration on hybrid communications. And that's where Mitel sits in. 53% are looking at AI-powered communications. This is a strong signal that it's a game changer and people want to move away from pure cloud solutions. Enterprises today are no longer locked into a single approach. They want that flexibility. Mitel customers, Mitel partners want that flexibility of how they can move forward and give the best solution, regardless of whether that be on-prem, cloud, or a combination of both. They want the path of least resistance. They want to have all of the regulations and be compliant to any of the security requirements and sovereignty requirements within that market, but they want to have that full control. The UCaaS models don't give full control over a solution. So when we're looking at upgrades, we're looking at downtime, we're looking at availability, enterprise customers want more control. And they want to maximize it. They want to maximize the outsourcing. They want to maximize the return on that investment as well. So why Mitel and why MX1? Mitel MX1 is core in our approach to that hybrid solution. Hybrid solution's nothing new in the MX1 portfolio. We've been offering hybrid for a number of years. It's a flexible approach. It's built on the over 45 years of our communication heritage, and we're fully focused on challenge the idea of unified communications and how it's defined. We very much put the MX1 from a customer experience perspective, from a mission critical vertical, and very much in that sovereignty and keeping control of the data within a customer's environment. When we look at Mitel's ecosystem and how it supports hybrid communications and how it brings in things like AI and the deeper requests from AI. So Mitel gives that opportunity to give you a dedicated instance, whether that be in private cloud, on-premise, a private instance in public cloud, or that hybrid approach. We have our own applications and framework that sits on top of that with our collaboration tools, our contact center, and our vertical solutions. And then we have the flexibility of offering that integration in to those AI experiences, those new technologies that are coming through, but within a controlled manner. So when we can look at our Zoom integration, when we can look at our talkative integration for contact center and AI integration into the contact center, and then we can look at our integrations into UCaaS solutions, very much with Zoom, Microsoft Teams, layering that over the top. What that gives the customer is that integration between the newer technology, AI automation, changing the landscape, making sure that they're at the forefront of technology as it comes through, but also giving them that security of the hybrid model, that the core services are locked into an on-prem or a private cloud. So giving them the best of both worlds as they move forward. We can see that in our core MX1. We can also see it in our CX solutions. Very much CX solutions today, not locked into that single approach. We want that flexibility, scalability, but most of all, we want that control and we want the options when it comes to the infrastructure. We see more and more in the contact center the requirement to layer over the top AI integrations, whether that be chatbots, whether that be recommendation engines, whether that be the next generation of agentic AI. But we see very much that voice is still the major media into a contact center and into an organization. And we want to make sure that we're offering a consistent approach across all medias. But again, when we're looking at that hybrid approach and why people are moving back from pure cloud to hybrid, it's about that control and it's about offering them that control within that service. Again, our ecosystem when it comes to our UC solutions, Mitel's in the core, and we're offering those integrations of flexibility in the deployment model, but also flexibility when it comes to the integrations of what's available in the wider market. And let's have a real world example. We can see that customers are moving today. Why are they moving? And what are the drivers behind that? We can see a real customer example. So this was a tender that was about 6 years ago for a university based in the USA, 6 campus sites, supporting 22,000 students, 1,000 instructional staff, and 2,000 support staff. What they had was a legacy a legacy UC solution or a legacy call manager solution. It wasn't possible to upgrade. They had requirements to look at supporting multiple university campus sites, remote administrations. Teams won this offering, and why did they win that offering? Well, they offered a flexible approach, unified communications. They initial offers cost, efficiency, and reduced hardware, eliminating the need for the PBX, eliminating the need for hardware on site. Remote flexibility, staff can work anywhere. They could take their business number wherever they were working because Teams is a hosted environment. And scalability to modernize and add new services on as they became available in the Teams solution. But why didn't it work? And this is what we see more and more, and we are seeing more customers looking back at our hybrid approach. It's because when they move to Teams, it doesn't always fit. Public cloud UCaaS solutions don't always fit the requirements for regulations, scalability, survivability, and redundancy. So one of the things is the lack of control, both of the environment and the availability. In a UCaaS solution, the customer has no control of downtime and upgrades. They inherit what happens within the core. Teams is very complex when it comes to the more advanced core routing solutions, call queues, attendance, resource accounts, offering having to jump out of the GUI or the UI into PowerShell to do more complex issues. outbound calls, lack of control on outbound calls based in a hosted session border controller. Physical device management in Teams is rather complicated. It means that you've transitioning from a traditional desk phones to Teams certified can be difficult without the surrounding firmware updates. You end up in almost a dual system approach, supporting a legacy analog call manager or PBX and the Teams environment with little to no integration between the two. And whilst Teams is very good for collaboration, it lacks the specialized contact center feature set, some of the complex IVR, advanced reporting that an enterprise today has grown with as call managers have grown with them. And there's also the license complexity within Teams. It can be confusing as to what type of license is needed for what feature set, how that license is layered over the top, and what service you can offer. And again, back to that control, inconsistency in updates. Microsoft have the ability with Teams just to push updates down. And as a large enterprise, that could cause things like changes in business process, and ultimately, in some cases, complete loss of service or outages. So what did Mitel bring to the solution? Mitel brought back control of the core telephony and call control into an MX1 solution with remote site survivability. That's a true hybrid solution. It was a resilient MX1, private DC and pockets of on-prem for resiliency. And it gave a single system approach across the whole of their estate, whether that be legacy or UC, whether that be direct routing into the existing Teams environment, and full flexibility of the Mitel estate. Most importantly, we protect the customer's investment in Teams. Because if we go down any route, it's not wrong to invest. And if we can move that forward and underpin the UC solution of Teams with the security and the hybrid model of a Mitel call manager, then it's a win-win for both customer and partner. And the solution looked like this. It really did give a true hybrid way of working. We had remote site survivability in multiple locations. We were able to layer over the device of choice for any of the users within the system, whether that be contact center, Microsoft Teams, Mitel Mobility and UC clients, fixed devices or legacy devices. We were able to maintain the investment in Teams and that cloud infrastructure, whether that be Office 365, but also underpin it with the availability of a Mitel solution and the availability and security of an MX1. So why does the world need Mitel? Why does the world need hybrid solutions? We're seeing more and more customers looking back to a dedicated instance and sovereignty. That's becoming more important in the marketplace today. Availability and control, very much the control over a solution, but also the compliance that sits within local markets. And it's about that enterprise-grade solution. It's about giving customers the ability to control their enterprise solution and their telephony solution.